Hey everyone, Chris here from Reilly Auto Parts to show you how to install and set up a new Edelbrock carburetor. We've also asked Brent McCarthy from Edelbrock to join us to provide all the insider tips and tricks you'll need for a successful carburetor installation.
When you're shopping for a carburetor, whether it's for a drag car, street cruiser, or hot rod, the first thing to consider is how much airflow you'll need. This is measured in CFM, or cubic feet per minute. The basic formula for this is engine size, accounting for any modifications, times maximum RPM, and divided by 3456. Today, we're working on a slightly modified 350 Chevrolet, and since this car is a cruiser, we'll be assuming that maximum RPM might be around 6,000. Using this formula, we chose an Edelbrock 1406, which delivers 600 CFM, and this carburetor is available on the shelf at most O'Reilly Auto Parts locations. Now that we've chosen our carburetor, there are a couple of accessories we always recommend. First is a fuel inlet pipe, part number 8126, as well as an inline fuel filter. We're going to be using a Clearview filter, part number 8748, to make sure that the fuel that reaches our carburetor is free from any debris that could cause clogs. Also, before you install the carburetor, make sure all your basic maintenance is done, including making sure that your spark plugs, wires, air filter, PCV valve, and more are in top condition. Also, check your fuel pressure when the engine is idling if possible. Edelbrock carburetors can handle up to 6.5 psi, but 5.5 psi is ideal to reduce the risk of flooding while delivering plenty of fuel to the engine. Fuel pressure can be tested off the inlet pipe using the 1/8 NPT port and the O'Reilly Loaner Tool fuel pressure gauge. Or you can permanently mount a gauge to the pipe and quickly check fuel pressure at any time. If the fuel pressure is too high, a pressure regulator may also need to be added to the system before continuing. Looking over our new carburetor, let's check out a few of the areas we'll be working with the most. First, the throttle arm. This will have to be connected to your throttle linkage and is designed to fit most 1976 and earlier GM cable setups with no adapters. If you're working with other makes, adapters are available for Ford and Chrysler applications. 1977 and later GM will use an 8009 stud instead of a ball stud. The accelerator pump is activated by this link, and this connection has 3 possible adjustments. Because this arm acts as a lever, the inner hole will provide the largest shot of fuel, the middle hole a normal shot, and the outermost will send the least amount of fuel. In most cases, leaving it in the factory position will be sufficient, as this position is matched to the CFM rating of the carburetor. At the front of the carburetor are several vacuum connections. The lower 3/16" full-time vacuum source will usually be connected to your automatic transmission modulator if your vehicle is so equipped. This is also where you connect a vacuum gauge for tuning. The 3/16" time port, which is a little higher up and on the passenger side, will be connected to the distributor's vacuum advance. There is also a large vacuum tube in the center of the carburetor for positive crankcase ventilation or PCV system. If any of these connections aren't going to be used, make sure to cap them off to prevent vacuum leaks, which can cause your new carburetor to run lean and idle too high. Also, on the front of the carburetor are the idle mixture screws that we'll be using later. From the factory, these are set to an airflow target, so don't touch them just yet. If the carburetor has been used before, screw them in until they are lightly bottom out and then back them out 1.5 turns. This is usually a good base setting to get the car running before fine-tuning the mixture. On the back of the carburetor is a threaded vacuum hole. If you need this hole for power brakes, use a 3/8 hose quarter pipe brass fitting. If your power brake vacuum line uses intake manifold vacuum, go ahead and plug this hole with a quarter pipe plug supplied in the kit. In either case, use fuel compatible thread sealer on the threads. On the bottom of the carburetor, you can see the equal size throttle bores, hence the name square bore for this style of carburetor. The kit includes a new gasket, and making sure this fits your intake manifold without any obvious pathways for leaks is a good step before starting your installation. To fit a spread bore style intake manifold, like a quadrajet, you'll need an adapter plate, such as the Edelbrock 2696. In our case, we're mounting this carburetor to an Edelbrock RPM air gap intake, so we already know it's a perfect fit. On the right side of the carburetor, we see the electric choke assembly. This will need to be connected to power to allow it to open the choke to control the engine's air-fuel mixture as it warms up to operating temperature. The choke is set from the factory and should only be adjusted if necessary. This side also has the fuel inlet, and the kit supplies a straight fitting that connects to a fuel hose to deliver fuel to the carburetor. Since we picked up an inlet pipe and fuel filter, we'll be installing those instead. Now we can start installing the carburetor to the intake. First, make sure the intake sealing surface is clean and free from old gasket material, oil, and fuel. Now you can install your new carburetor gasket and the carburetor. Thread the carburetor nuts over the studs by hand and then use a 1/2-inch socket and tighten them in a crisscross pattern in several steps until snug. Do not over-tighten these nuts, as this can cause damage to the body of the carburetor. Now we can connect the throttle and kickdown linkage to the throttle arm. You'll also need to install an external return spring, which closes the carburetor valves when the throttle pedal is released. Now I'll have Chris press on the accelerator so we can make sure everything is set up properly. With the pedal fully depressed, the butterfly valves are fully open, and as he releases the throttle, we can see that the valves fully close and that the idle speed screw is contacting the lever. Now, let's do this again with the air cleaner in place. If you notice any binding in the pedal, or if the throttle arm doesn't fully return, you may need to check your accelerator pedal, the cable, or the throttle arm for any interference issues. Now we can install the fuel line to the carburetor. There are a variety of fittings that can be used for this, but we'll be using the inlet pipe and fuel filter mentioned earlier to simplify the installation. Finally, we need to hook up the electric choke. As you can see, the ground wire is connected to the body of the carburetor. The positive wire will need to be connected to a 12-volt switched power source. This can be run from inside the vehicle and should only provide power when the key is in the run position. You can verify when power is available to the circuit using a test light or a multimeter. Finally, make sure that your distributor advance, PCV hose, and other vacuum lines are hooked to the carburetor, or that the vacuum tubes are capped. Now you should be ready to start the engine. If your car has an electric fuel pump, turn the key to the run position and allow it to fill the carburetor bowls. If using a mechanical pump, disconnect the coil wire and crank the engine for 10 to 15 seconds to fill the fuel bowls. Check carefully for any signs of a fuel leak and repair them before moving forward. If everything is okay, press the pedal to the floor once and release fully. Now start the engine with your foot off the pedal. Once again, check for leaks and let the engine warm up to operating temperature. You can quickly press the accelerator pedal and release it to bring the engine off the fast idle once it has begun to warm up.
And that's it for how to install an Edelbrock carburetor. At factory settings, most vehicles will run and idle with a new carburetor right out of the box. To learn more about how to tune the carburetor, you can check out our tuning and adjustment video. If you're not comfortable taking this on yourself, every Edelbrock carburetor comes with tech line support to help guide you through your installation and adjustments. Or we'd be happy to recommend a local shop to help you with your installation. We'll see you again soon.